In today's video, we continue on with our NHL GM report card series as I look through the teams in the Metropolitan Division. Today, we look to the Carolina Hurricanes, who they had a change in GM and a lot of significant changes to their roster. Today, we're going to look at the trades, the signings, and grade the work of the new GM coming up next. Well, welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the Carolina Hurricanes and giving Eric Tulsky his very first NHL GM report card. Of course, we're going through this series. We're now getting pretty deep here into the Eastern Conference. We've done all the teams in the Atlantic. We're down to, I think it's 3 teams left in the Metropolitan here. We still have to do Columbus, Philadelphia, and I believe the New York Islanders after this one. So we're after that, we'll be moving on to the Western Conference. So today we're going to take a look at any trades and then signings that the team did for Carolina internally, what they've done externally for UFAs coming in. Take a look at the additions, subtractions, how the team has changed, and then we'll grade new GM Eric Tulsky on his work. Of course, that was one of the big changes itself. Don Waddell, early in the offseason, resigned. He was due for a new contract, decided that it was time for him to move on. I do believe it's fair to say that I think there were some minor issues between he and owner Tom Dundon. Not to say that there was anything major. I don't think it was anything major. I just honestly think that Waddell was just ready for a change after being there for a long time. Not to say that Dundon's hard to work with or anything, but we do know he likes to do things on a budget. He's very resourceful that way. And, I think over time it can wear on you for sure. We've heard of all the drawn out negotiations with Rod Brindamore and his staff, which also got done this offseason, which was one of Waddell's last pieces of work before moving on, who was now the GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, of course, that was a big change, but Tulsky's been there for a while as an AGM, very much an analytics-driven person, and, we'll see how he's done here so far. So, starting with the trades, there's only 2. The first one is they traded the rights to Jake Guentzel, who they acquired at the NHL trade deadline from Pittsburgh. They were very much hoping and had full intention on trying to keep Guentzel and extend him. Unfortunately, they were not successful. However, they did make a very, very fair offer, in my opinion, based on what was reported. They tried to get Guentzel to agree for an 8-year extension at pretty much the exact same kind of money he signed for in Tampa, around $9 million. Originally, I think they were looking for like an 8 times 8. They brought the number up. And it wasn't long before free agency that word was a lot of NHL reporters and insiders thought it was going to work out for him to stay. And then, of course, he didn't sign, though. But it was sounding very, very positive that negotiations were going in the right direction. And then Tampa swoops in. And, I guess he liked the idea of playing with the guys from Tampa better. I mean, Tampa, slight advantage tax-wise, but, based on what he had to say, it just sounded like that concept of him going to Tampa was just an opportunity he couldn't pass up. So it's unfortunate for Carolina after giving up assets at the deadline, and he was a good fit. He produced well, and they could not get it done. So they trade his rights to Tampa once it became obvious that he wasn't going to sign. They get a 2025 third-round pick in return, and unfortunately had to move on. So they finally found that scoring winger that they've been looking for a few years, and they couldn't keep him. It's a real sad story, to be honest. I really thought he was a great fit there, and it was going to be a long-term situation where it was going to work out. They also treated defenseman Dylan Coughlin to the Winnipeg Jets for future considerations. That was after later into free agency, once a lot of other moves were done, basically as a cost-cutting move, and they had more than enough D. So it's pretty apparent he was likely not going to be a regular in their top 6. So at the end of the day, cost-cutting move, no big deal. There's no return. Now, looking at the signings, of course, they had some interesting free agents. They didn't get to keep a lot of them, but the ones that they did keep, they came to terms with Marty Necas, who many people thought was going to be traded. It sure sounded that way, and they did engage heavily in trade talks. There was belief. There was at least 2 or 3 occasions where they were close, but the problem was, from what we've heard and led to believe, is that Necas would not sign a contract with the acquiring team. I think there was Buffalo was reportedly close, and there was at least 1 or 2 others, and he turned down the opportunity to sign a contract with them. so it kind of killed the deal. So again, he wanted a trade. Carolina was trying to accommodate, but they of course had to get a good return. And here we are. So they signed him to a 2-year deal at $6.5 million. And based on the fact that he should be able to get a bigger role, get more power play time with the changes we've seen to this roster, I think he'll live up to that. I really do. He's got a lot of skill. He's got good speed. I really think he's an underrated player. But at the same time, they had a deep team before, and I just don't know if he was, with the increased role, I think we'll see more production. At least we should. And it's up to him now to kind of put up the numbers to get what he wants. And maybe they'll have a long-term future together. If not, maybe we'll see a trade after a year. We'll see. But they signed Nate just 2 years, $6.5 million, fair contract. They re-signed Jack Drury. He gets a 2-year deal at $1.7 million. Again, that one is reasonable, I think. But of course, with that increase in pay, Drury's likely going to move to being a third-line player. They got Jacob Slavin extended, who was one of their top priorities, definitely their top priority on the blue line. He signs an 8-year extension at $6.4 million. One of the game's top defensive players. That to me is a home run. I'll give them full marks for the Slavin extension. They keep Jordan Martinook, 3-year deal at $3 million per season. Not too bad. To me, I think he's maybe should have been paid a little bit less, but overall, Martinook is the third-line player, and I know he's a good role player and it's been there a while, important to the room and all that, but Carolina typically doesn't play for those intangibles. They usually only, they're pretty strict with what they're going to pay out. And it's not, I'm not saying that's a big overpayment, but I would have liked to have seen that contract come in a little bit less. And then Jalen Chatfield extends at 3 times 3 as well. $3 million for Chatfield. He'll have an opportunity, though, I think, to play. At least it was looking that way, that he was going to be able to play an increased role. Now, based on the other moves they made in free agency, it looks like he's probably going to be on the third pair. $3 million on your third pair. It's a little bit much, but at the same time, they do have a pretty deep blue line. But long term, I think he's going to move up in this lineup because Brent Burns isn't going to be there much longer, in my opinion. Burns is down to the final year of his contract, and then you're probably going to see guys like Chatfield and Walker take even more minutes after the current season. So I think short term, he's going to play third pair, but long term, he'll move up to be a top 4 defenseman within the final couple of years of that contract, in my opinion. So overall, those re-signings are pretty good. So then they dip into free agency and they bring in Jack Roslovic, 1-year deal at $2.8 million. I think they're hoping Roslovic can play a top 6 role. That's the goal right now. They also bring in Sean Walker and Shane Gostisbehere on the back end. Walker gets a 5-year deal at 3.6. Gostisbehere gets a 3-year deal at 3.2. Very much like both of those contracts. I think they're very reasonable. They also lost some big defensemen in free agency as well. But for what those guys ended up getting paid elsewhere, I think they did a pretty good job value-wise replacing them. I'm not sure that their blue line, I don't think it's fair to say that the blue line is the same or better. I think it is a little bit weaker, but value-wise, they got good value on those deals. I really believe that. William Carrier is a free agent, comes on a 6-year deal at $2 million. You don't usually give term to a bottom 6, fourth line kind of forward. That shocked me. To make $2 million itself, I was like, ooh, okay. And then 6 years from a analytics-driven team and GM Eric Tulsky, that was quite surprising for me. I'm not a fan of the Carrier contract. I think it's way too much term. There's a reason why you don't see bottom 6 players get more than 2, maybe 3 years at most. But typically 1 and 2 years is a lot of the contracts for fourth liners. Sometimes more established guys will get like a third year, but that's usually about it. This is 6 at $2 million. I don't know if I like that. I really don't. Eric Robinson gets 1 year, $950. Tyson Jost, 1 year league minimum. Ty Smith signs on as a depth defenseman, 1 year league minimum as well. And of course, those guys are going to end up spending time in the minors. So again, they, for the most part, I like what they've done, but that Carrier contract, not really fond of that. So looking at the summary here of the addition, subtraction, who's in, who's out, coming in, you get Sean Walker and Shane Gostisbehere in the back end. And then up front, you've got Carrier, who's going to be a fourth liner, Roslovic, who's they're hoping will play top 6 minutes. Eric Robinson and Tyson Jones, who can be depth players. Robinson might find a home on the 4th line. Going out, though, some big losses here. You get Brett Pesce, 6 years and $5.5 million in New Jersey. That was a big blow. Brady Shea, 7x7 in Nashville. You lose Shea and Pesce, but look, they signed for a combined $12.5 million, and you've got Walker and Gostisbehere for under 7, right? So, it's significantly better value. But are they as good or better than those two guys? I don't think so. Brett Pesce is one of the better defensive defensemen. That's going to hurt. Walker's pretty good, but I honestly think Pesce is a fair bit better. Teravainen leaves town, goes back to Chicago, 3 years at $5.4 million. There's no way they were going there on that. Stefan Nason, 3 years at $275. Honestly, I don't mind that contract for a third-line player like Nason. I'm a little bit surprised. I thought maybe for what they gave, combination of Martinook or Carrier, it might have been better off trying to keep Nason. I really like what he brought to that team. I do think that's a big loss. Of course, Kuznetsov leaves town, gets terminated mutually, of course, and it goes back to Russia. Tony DeAngelo's not signed. He's heading to Russia. Antti Ranta is not there anymore. He's unsigned. Not sure what's happening with him. And Dylan Coughlin is traded, so he's gone as well. So really, 4 defensemen are gone. You got Pesce and Shea and DeAngelo and Coughlin all out the door. A couple of forwards with Teravainen and Nason and Kuznetsov and a goalie and Ranta. That's pretty significant changes. It really is. And the guys that came in, some of them are pretty good, but overall, to me, there's just no way you can say this team is just as good. To make matters worse right now is Seth Jarvis remains unsigned. Now, I'm recording this video on Sunday. It's going to be hitting YouTube here in the next hour or two, so I don't expect shocking news before then. You never know. But if Jarvis is now magically signed, he was not when this was recorded. I know he's looking for some big term and some big money, and I think he's worth it. But it's not done yet. So to me, that's going to go against the grade, letting these things play out quite so long. So you're looking at a forward group of probably, assuming Jarvis can get signed, he'll have a spot on the top line with Aho and Svechnikov. And you got guys like Natchez is going to get a chance on the second line, probably with Roslovic, maybe Bradley Nadeau or like Jackson Blake, one of their youngsters. They're probably hoping we'll take a top 6 spot because they need them to. You got Jordan Stahl can probably play with Martinook and maybe Drury, perhaps on the wing. Kotkaniemi, Carrier, Robertson. That's definitely a weaker forward group. You take Nason out, you take Teravainen out, you had Kuznetsov, who was a decent fit at the deadline. Gensel obviously was a big loss as well. Obviously those guys are major losses. Like Jake Gensel being out, who I forgot to mention, who was obviously showing on the list there for being out. Those are significant losses. Just there's no way you can shake it up. That forward group is not as deep. And on the back end, you got Slavin, Burns, maybe Orlov, Walker, Gostisbehere, Chatfield. Pretty decent blue line. It's still a very good blue line in my opinion. Brent Burns is another year older. You got Slavin there for 8 years plus. So, he's locked in. Walker's got a new contract. Gostisbehere's got a new contract. Chatfield's got a new contract. Orlov doesn't have much time left. I'm not sure what his future holds beyond the current coming year. You got Anderson and Kochetkov between the pipes. So goaltending should be about the same. I expect it to be pretty decent. The blue line will be good, but I think it's fair to say, though, the loss of Brett Pesce is going to be felt. I don't think Sean Walker is as good as Pesce myself, at least right now. So then you factor in, can Gostisbehere give you similar production as Shea? I think he might be able to. Between Shea being out, and you got Gostisbehere, Orlov, Chatfield's offense might be picking up, like it showed signs of it. I think from an offensive perspective, they might be all right. They're not really going to miss DeAngelo or Coughlin a whole lot. So at the end of the day, the blue line's definitely a bit weaker, and so was the forward group. So I know that some of these deals that players they lost, I don't think they really had a chance on Pesce or Shea. I really don't. They were not going to pay Brady Shea 7x7. Brett Pesce was probably close, but again, competing with him to go have a chance to go home and play for the Devils. They weren't bringing back Teravainen at that number either. The only one I think that they lost, I think they really could have kept, would be Stefan Nason. That would be my take on that. I would have been more willing to pay him than bringing in guys like William Carrier or even what they paid Jordan Martinook. I would have liked to have seen Martinook's contract come in a little bit lower, maybe not sign Carrier, and then give more money to Nason. That to me would be what I would have done. But, that's, I guess, like I said, that's not what happened. So to me, they definitely deserve a little bit of the blame for some of the players that could have stayed but didn't. And obviously the guys they brought in mostly are okay. And it's not that I don't like William Carrier. I think he's a fine addition to their fourth line to replace what they're missing. I just don't like the contract of 6 times 2. Thankfully, it's not a ton of money, but that's just too much. So I'm going to give Eric Tulsky's first GM report card a grade of a C. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the Carrier contract. I'm not really, I think they could have kept Nason. They didn't. It's unfortunate they couldn't keep Gensel. I can understand that, though. I think they were in a tough battle. They bring back, and the fact that Jarvis is not signed. So leaving a big question mark. If for any reason Seth Jarvis misses time to start the year, if this drags on into camp and he misses time, they're already going to be missing some offense in that forward group. If he misses time, it's just going to be a worse situation. So I hope it doesn't get to that. And if he had if he had Jarvis signed to say an 8-year deal at $7 million or $8 million, somewhere in that 7-8 range, I would probably upgrade him maybe to a B-, but it's not done. They lost a ton of talent. They're not as good. I don't blame it all on Eric Tulsky, but definitely a little bit of it for sure. So let me know your thoughts on the Hurricanes in the comment section. Are they going to be as good a team, or is this a weakened roster compared to what they had before? And what should Jarvis get for a new deal? If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.